Welcome back to the channel. If you're new, hello. I'm always ready, and today after this video you'll be ready to have the right conversation when it comes to Unreal Engine and the games built on it. Now we're going to use Borderlands 4 as the example because I hear a lot of conversation around Unreal Engine 5 and the GPU demand, right? Like, oh, it's using Lumen and Nanite, and you should just have the right hardware, new hardware, from the devs and everything in between. And what we really have is a game built with futuristic tech running on futuristic hardware, and it still chokes because the engine's assumptions about scalability and parallelism haven't caught up to its ambitions. So let's unpack that and really do a deep dive into what really is going on with Unreal Engine 5 and why, quite honestly, even with 5.5 and 5.6, it's too late to solve in this specific build. So let's get into it. Here, I just wanted to bring back to everybody's attention first the Borderlands 4 PC specs. Okay, because it's very paltry just from the jump, and maybe this is what should have been warning everyone. And this is not a video at all to say the game is not fun, right? I have such great memories on Borderlands 2. This game even forced me really to go back to checking out Borderlands 3 and its performance. And so here we are, because it's a good and fun game loop, but nothing about that game loop has really changed. So why does it run so heavy? And so here we are with the minimum specs, right? It's saying that it requires 8 gigs of VRAM for the graphics card. It needs an SSD. It particularly wants an 8 CPU core, which I'll get to the CPU. And we got Windows 10 or 11. Now for the minimum spec, it says it wants an i7-9700K, which is really still a good CPU. It's kind of interesting. We don't really hear a lot of channels talking about CPUs like this, but this CPU can definitely handle this game, or it should. It has 16 gigs of RAM, and they're saying that the minimum is a 2070 and a RX 5700 XT or the A580. I don't even know why they put Intel on there, because quite honestly, like, Intel's minimum and recommended cards essentially are going to end up being the same because it's still too new, right? Still too new. What's interesting about this is to take note of the fact that the specs or the technology, it's using Unreal Engine 5. So there are a lot of things that it's going to assume for its visual fidelity. So it is going to be using ray tracing, and I've seen this commentary a lot across various channels I've been looking at, but Lumen is ray tracing. It is Epic's variant or take on how they approach ray tracing. It's not that it's not, okay? So this game is using ray tracing. When I looked at a particular video for Daniel Owens, I believe it was Daniel Owens, but there is ray tracing happening, but then there are certain aspects of it that are screen space, which is interesting, but it's still there, which is why it's going all the way down to a 2070. Essentially, it's saying, what is the initial graphics cards that handle ray tracing? And it's like, yo, we'll just start with the 2070. So, and then for the recommended, it jumps up to a 12700, which I have a 12700K in this rig that I'm using, a 5800X. So again, should be handling this fairly well. 32 gigs of RAM, And now the recommended is an RTX 3080, an RX 6800 XT, or again, an Intel Arc B580. So already we have a very interesting spectrum of what this should be doing for us. Now, keep in mind, and the reason that I'm calling this out or taking time on this channel to do so is that Borderlands 3 released in 2019, and Gearbox tends to have like a 5 to 6 year development cycle between games. Unreal Engine 5 was publicly available in early 2022, but internal builds were accessible to studios like Gearbox as early as 2021. So given the scale of Borderlands 4 and its open world ambitions, development likely began around late 2020 to early 2021. So the reason I'm bringing that up is if we look at the recommended spec, it's sort of lining up with that timeline. The 40 series and 50 series aren't in scope yet. So why is it that modern hardware is struggling so badly with this game's demands? So I want to draw our attention first to Daniel Owen's video where someone was like, hey, why don't you just get a 5090, right? Just throw money at the problem. That is a whole nother layer of entitlement that is not for the purview of this video, but for savvy users, let's see what happens when you just throw money at the problem. So you would think that this is good performance in the top left corner that you see of this game, but it's giving about 85 to 90 FPS max settings on a 5090 in the 9800X 3D at 1080p. This is all it can give. And he's right. It actually looks great. There's a lot happening here on the screen that's not happening in Borderlands 3, for example, right? Like the dense foliage and like everything having a shadow cast and etc. It looks lush, right? But it's only getting that in the environment on like the best setup in the world. This is 4K native. Same setup. It still can't do its job properly. The most expensive setup in the world can't hold 60 frames a second at native 4K. You have to push it to high settings, which technically is medium settings to get it to run well. And this is just not what you're expecting of the performance of this kind of like class or tier setup. Now, keep in mind how this game looks, right? So what we're going to do is switch over to my gameplay of the 12700K and a 4060 Ti on Borderlands 3. So here I am back on that setup, 4060 Ti, 12700K. We're out in the world, we're running around, the lighting and environment, everything, we're shooting stuff. And this card is hanging out at native 1440p in the 90s to 100s. Okay. With all the stuff popping up all over the place and AI running around just to show like a different spot. Let's see. Oh yeah, here's the fight inside, so you can see some of the lighting solution that the game had back in, what was this, 2019 when this released. And look at that performance in the top right corner. We are yet again still getting upwards in the 90s, in the 100 range at native 1440p. This game is archaic by the standard set from the current gen, because it has no FSR or DLSS pipeline. When you scale it down internally, you either have a 75% resolution scale or you have a 50% resolution scale.
On the knife-wielding maniac.
But AI scaling can't save this game. So guess what they did? Now, the game was bad at launch, for those who remember. But they did go back over time and address some of the things. So this is a habit that Gearbox has, unfortunately. But as you can see from future tech touching on this game, you're seeing performance that quite literally should be slightly heavier, but similar from Borderlands 4, given that the production of that game was guesstimating when it started really probably back in 2020, 2021. So what I want to bring up is, why does Borderlands 4 run so pathetically bad? Unreal Engine 5's visual stack scales poorly, and Borderlands 4 leaned hard into it without fully optimizing for runtime efficiency. Gearbox likely targeted Unreal Engine 5's bleeding edge features like Lumen and Nanite, assuming future GPUs would brute force through the overhead. And this is where everybody keeps landing on the conversation, but it's incorrect. Unreal Engine 5's CPU bottlenecks and thread orchestration issues weren't solved, they were inherited. And this is what everybody leaves out. That's the issue. Nobody talks about Unreal Engine 5's CPU overhead issues. Even with DLSS and FrameGen, the game suffers because the CPU thread model and asset streaming pipeline don't keep up. It's not about raw power. We just saw that with a 5090.
Look there.
A 98, 100X 3D, 32 gigs of DDR5 RAM, right? Like you get the whole kit. It's a $4,000 setup. It's about how you utilize that power. Borderlands 4's open zones, dynamic lighting, and physics heavy combat push Unreal Engine 5's weakest areas, especially the asset loading and in-game thread saturation. So I'm trying to harp on that for us because you have the AI actors, and then you have the game logic, and then you have Nanite, and then you have Lumen, and then you have the asset loading issues, which you see like big frame time spikes. I mean, you can check out any benchmark for the game. There are a lot of popular channels that have done it, etc. And you get the typical Unreal Engine 5 stutter, right? Why is that? It's because Unreal Engine 5 was built being very GPU forward, but they just brought the CPU, the way the CPU thread cycles worked from Unreal Engine 4 over to 5. So it's not really actually compensating well for what's now happening under the hood. And so this is why you also see a lot of these games having post-launch patches to stabilize performance. So in that way, even though people were really mad about what Tim Sweeney said about developers in Unreal Engine 5, he was kind of right. Because if you were doing this properly or doing this correctly, you would address the severe stuttering and the crashes and the frame drops in development. But even 5090s, 5080s, 4090s, they're getting this. Now I have a 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte in here, which that spec doesn't even really get mentioned on tier list of cards and performance metrics. It was even left out on what Gearbox put out for the game, so we can check that out. And shout outs to whoever put this together, but they have every GPU pretty much listed that they think should or could have run this thing. I don't know why they have the 3050 in here, but it is what it is. It's getting 30 FPS, right? 1080p. Now this is upscaling with DLSS quality, and it's saying that it's only getting 30 FPS at all these low settings. That's wild. The 5060 just came out, 5060 Ti, and they're giving it 60 plus. And they are telling you that it also is going to be scaling, and it's going to use multi-frame generation. So there you go. You're going to have frame generation turned on. If I go over to the 4060 Ti, mind you, I believe this is the 8 GB variant. Everything's on low except for the texture quality and the geometry quality. All right. Yeah. See, a lot of this is on low volumetrics, shadows. So it's very telling on what's happening. These are CPU intensive things also, not just the GPU. You're going to have upscaling at 1080p. You're going to be using frame gen, right? It's the 40 series. So all you get is ×2 to get 60 plus at 1080p. Here is the 5090, and it also is saying that you are going to need to use quality DLSS and using multi-frame generation on everything cranked just to get 60 plus FPS. There's no other reason to look at any of the specs for 1440p or for 4K. You need this, according to them. This is optimal settings. You need to do this on a 5090. Why is this game so awful? Well, there's a couple of things that I want to address. And this is where the speech, the rant, the breakdown really goes on. And I want to start with a question. What's the role of a game developer? Are they supposed to release demos, or are they supposed to be releasing products that meet users where they are? Okay. We are now on the back end of 2025, and we've gotten several Unreal Engine 5 titles that are able to force modern hardware to bend the knee in the name of visual fidelity. Unreal Engine is like racing uphill with a turbo kit on a 2005 Toyota Corolla. Lumen and Nanite and World Partition are these high performance add-ons meant to push visual fidelity to the max, but they promise speed, power, and responsiveness, and ignore the fact that the CPU can't keep up with how they've designed the game. And it's not just Gearbox. These are pretty much most of the developers, especially AAA, that use Unreal Engine 5. They're not plug and play tools. They use so much of the full stack of your CPU that they demand a full rebuild of the engine architecture to actually work. The development team literally has to go in and customize the environment. So the optimization does need to start at the beginning. Like the body of this car we're talking about is Unreal Engine 4's legacy thread model. The game thread render, thread asset streaming systems were retrofitted. They did not work on new things for the CPU in that way like they did for the GPU. And the ECU of the car, right? The task scheduler here in this metaphor isn't tuned for the turbo kit. It's not tuned for Lumen and Nanite and all the other stuff happening. It's still prioritizing the wrong threads, mismanaging load, and failing to adapt dynamically. So you get stutter, you get bottlenecks, you get frame drops, even with top tier hardware. You don't have to just take my word for it. You saw it, right? That's what Daniel Owens and wanted to put the context to for the people that are just saying, just throw money at it, bro, right? You know, or others are like, stop being poor. It's just really entitled, stupid bullshit. It's a poorly designed game. And putting out a patch for something that took, 5-6 years to build is, if it were that simple, we would see a very different environment, but it's not. There's something more going on under the hood. So, and last you have the driver, right? Well, before that, let me finish with this whole analogy with the ECU. Now, just looking at how smooth this game is running is quite hilarious. But it's supposed to, because future tech is kind of overcoming even the deficiencies of UE4 when they put this together. But this ECU, how Unreal Engine 5 handles the CPU on the back end, it misallocates CPU cycles. It prioritizes lighting over gameplay and leaves physics and AI wheezing in the backseat of the car. Right. This is why even when you do use the tools like DLSS for the frame gen and etc., in a lot of games it really isn't helping all that much. You don't really see jumps in performance. I have an older video when I was running the Battlefield 6 beta, and I had the internals running, and you can see like the FPS from the CPU side, like what it's able to possibly achieve. And then you have the GPU side of it. So CPU FPS, GPU FPS. And in that game, in this setup, the GPU always had higher numbers, but what you saw being actually run and displayed was the CPU, right? So if the GPU has like 120 frames per second, it should be able to output. However, the CPU can only get 90 with the architecture and everything like that. Then guess what the game's running at? It's running at 90. Right? So this is if they had those kind of tools to show. This is what's happening with Unreal Engine 5. But you can't just slap on mods, right? You have to actually rebuild, re-architect Unreal Engine 5. It struggles so much. And look at this water, but I have to say, this looks like water, does it not? So yes, I think Borderlands 4 looks awesome. Not gonna get into the whole, like, I love the art style, but that water looks great. And so I think some design choices, not compromises, but design choices could have been better made to make sure as many people as possible are able to buy and play the game, which is so funny because they're in it to make money, of course. But then you don't respect the environment that people are using. So how do you expect to make the money? Anyway, so I want to take a break from the critiques to think about how that would be solved moving forward. Whether it's developers who have the manpower to get in there and tweak and customize the engine more, or just for Unreal Engine 5 moving forward, even 6. The first thing is to decouple Lumen from the main thread. Offload the lighting probes and bounce calculations to async compute or dedicated threads. Now, some of you may be thinking that Lumen already can and does leverage async compute, but the reality is more nuanced than the marketing pipeline. Hardware ray tracing when Lumen is using that in particular, it does utilize async compute for certain tasks, especially bounce lighting and reflection tracing. This allows for it to offload some of that work from the main render thread to the GPU's async compute queues, which is a win-win for parallelism. Now, in software ray tracing, Lumen is primarily CPU bound, and it uses voxelized scene data and screen traces, which are much harder to parallelize effectively. So async compute really isn't at play here. And when people are going to be looking for more performance, they're going to be falling back to, if possible, in the system, software Lumen, but then the CPU is going to get punched in the face. So, now, as of UE 5.5 and above, I have to see which version this is built on, but I doubt it's 5.5. Epic has started supporting async sign distance field generation for dynamic meshes, and that's also a big deal because it means Lumen can handle dynamic geometry more efficiently, and that part does use async compute. But even when it's enabled, the task scheduler doesn't always prioritize it optimally, so you can end up with GPU queues idling while the CPU chokes on game thread logic, especially in open world traversal, like in this game where you see like that big spike or AI heavy scenes. And that's why it needs to keep working on like loading new things in when like you change the settings, right? As soon as you do that, all of a sudden it has to like recompile again and all of that. Honestly, it's a hot mess. But async compute, before I move forward, is only part of the story. UE5's thread orchestration and task prioritization still lean heavily on legacy assumptions, right? Even with Lumen offloading some of the work, the render thread and the game thread often compete for CPU time. That's where you're seeing the stutter and the frame drops show up. And one of the other things that really hammers this is the blueprint system that's used in Unreal Engine 5 also, because it's also using that main game thread. So everything's competing on the same thread for runtime. And if the blueprints had an async compiler or even a perceptual profiler that flagged heavy blueprint usage in real time, it could transform how devs optimize. How's the best way to put this? It's like giving a turbo kit async fuel injection, but still routing ignition timing through a rotary dial. But back to decoupling it again, I could use perceptual heuristics to reduce the update frequency in static zones. Like we're trying to cull back or pull back some of the heavy lifting. The second thing would be to have modular task scheduling. You can implement a dynamic scheduler that prioritizes gameplay critical threads over visual fidelity, right? Like the primary responsibility should be the performance of the game. This is what the people keep arguing over and over, but it's just not happening from the developers. There could be even like a toggle, like responsiveness mode, that biases CPU time toward input, the physics, and the AI. That could be something that they do from an engine perspective also. Just a simple toggle that says, all right, here's what we're going to prioritize. Some of the other stuff can take a back seat, and they can do that dynamically within the engine. Context-aware fidelity scaling. So you can replace brute force nanite with adaptive LOD based on motion vectors and player focus. You could integrate perceptual simulation logic. I'm actually kind of trying to work on something like that behind the scenes, which is why I haven't put out so many videos, trying to do some development stuff. But you could use that to guide fidelity where it matters on screen. So again, trying to be more specific on where the scaling occurs within a screen space. And one of the other things they could do too is expose diagnostic overlays. Some of the information in Unreal Engine 5 is in a black box. Giving the developers and users real-time overlays showing thread saturation, render latency, bottlenecks, etc., like the whole shebang, could open that up without needing to have like a specific custom solution that's always being pushed. But mainly what we're looking for, primarily in the context of Lumen, Nanite, that sort of stuff, just give people the ability to sacrifice a few photons of bounce light to preserve input latency and simulation integrity. Modders, which I had a whole argument on the channel that people were trying to have about how modders are cheaters and hackers or whatever, but you know, they were ignorant of PC gaming. Modders are always stepping in to try to expose some of these things that exist within Unreal Engine 5 and try to help some of these games out. But it would just be better if you just exposed it and allowed users to manipulate that in the settings of a game rather than having to go through engine ionize and all that stuff to hope that it can affect some of those things. Coming into the conclusion of this isn't just about frames. It's about philosophy. Unreal Engine 5 treats visual fidelity as sacred, even when it undermines playability. But games aren't tech demos. They're systems of meaning, motion, and mastery. And if your engine can't prioritize that, it's time to rewrite the rules. In the end, I'm being long-winded in saying that Unreal Engine 5 already prioritizes the GPU. The GPU actually scales. It's the CPU that's left behind. And it's butchering the ability to advance the goals of dynamic lighting and rendering. No amount of horsepower can save you from a lacking optimization philosophy. If a company is trying to put out day one patches and fix it on the back end, it's already busted. The way it handles the CPU is the main culprit. The other misses that developers are having that always occur because we're human, we miss things. Those misses are secondary. Unreal Engine 5 isn't a bad engine. It's just a turbo kit that needs the correct chassis. And until Epic rebuilds the core, we're all just tuning sedans to race in Formula One. We're just always going to lose. If you care about motion fidelity, perceptual context, and simulation integrity, don't just upgrade your GPU. Upgrade your philosophy. You're the consumer, and the only response needed aren't these videos. Aren't these conversations that we're having on the back end. See enough of these to make the right decision on the next game moving forward and take time. When people say don't pre-order, first rule of Game Club is don't pre-order. The second rule of Game Club is don't pre-order, right? Like, you need to respond with your wallet to make the informed choice to withhold or not. And this isn't just PC, by the way. These issues are beginning to be shared on console and PC alike due to the nature of these development cycles. But you need to vote with your wallet because the industry always responds to that. If enough refunds occur or if enough game sales don't happen, they always respond to that. If you need to play something new, there are plenty of other titles, past and present, that don't suffer these performance woes. And they're exciting worlds just to be explored by you. And that's the fun part of gaming. games can always be the most current experience. I hope that some of what I've said is enough to get you thinking or start to investigate how Unreal Engine 5 is dealing with the CPU. The 5090, yes, it is obviously stronger than the 4060 Ti, but it's also requiring, according to the developers, you to use upscaling at 1080p
stealth, right?
to have 60 plus FPS. That's very alarming. And that should not be the future of the industry. Upscaling and particularly frame generation are not optimizations. They're just not. They're compensatory. And when somebody's asking you the most, right? Like when you go to work, people demand the best. And now these folks are asking you for your dollars. And it doesn't seem like it's the best. I'm not supposed to care about the pressures internally. I'm not supposed to care about dev cycles. You're not supposed to care about support the dev. You know how devs get supported? You know how publishers and that whole cycle in the industry gets supported? When they actually cater their products to what people are using. And when people are using $3,000 GPUs and still can't get what's expected, it's very telling. But that's all I have for that one. It's not something we usually try to focus on in here, but I do have a lot of videos where we tweak things. We're using frame gen. We're trying to see how things work, you know. But we just want to play games. And hopefully this sheds a little bit of light on what's going on. You don't need to chase the latest graphics card. Not when this is how the engine is so disrespectful, even to our 9800X 3D. That's it. I'm always ready. Until next time, be the meta. Peace.